What is up, guys? We are here for you. Sorry we're a little late. Had some stuff going on, but Glenn and I both knew there was no way we weren't doing this tonight. We know you guys enjoy it, and we're excited about it. So we're going to dig right into it. And as we've been doing the past couple weeks, Glenn, I think it's a good idea to, at least as people are hopping in, talk about general news as far as like the NFL. But tonight, guys, the majority of this conversation, unless Glenn has a totally different thought than me, which I highly doubt, is going to be about Liars Luncheon yesterday. Our reactions, our thoughts, et cetera, right? Like, and we're excited to get your guys' take on it. Make sure to get your questions in. We'll do our very best to answer them. But before we go any further, the other thing I want to do as well is I want to give a shout out real quick to our newest patron. Let me pull that up real quick.
Yeah, shout out to also somebody in our comments mentioned that they are a fan of ours from Iran. And that's pretty crazy. That's awesome. I mean, all across the world. So that is just something I never thought that would happen. So that's pretty freaking cool. Mentioned that he has to stay up sometimes overnight to watch primetime Raven games. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. But do you have that name?
Yeah, Nick Solano. Here we go.
Nick Solano.
Shout out to Nick Solano, our new patron. He's down in Florida.
Okay.
And he is liking the fact that the Ravens have been taking a lot of Floridians. I think when he messaged us, he was like, I'm part of Ravens Flock South, is I think what he called it. And look, I ain't got no problems with it.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. They have some quite special athletes in the South. There's no doubt about it. So yeah, I just wanted to quickly go. Alex Smith retired, finally hanging up the cleats after fighting his way back from the gruesome injury and turning himself back into a starter. Shout out to him. I'm glad that he's going. I mean, not him as a person, nothing against him as a person or a player, just happy that he got out of it and he didn't re-injure that leg and he's able to, go enjoy his post-football playing career and go and enjoy his time with his family. So shout out to Alex Smith. And I know there's a lot of, Niners fans that remember him fondly and some suggesting he should come back and retire as a Raven. So shout out to Alex Smith.
As a Niner.
I'm sorry, as a Niner. Yeah,
we're so used to it. Right?
That's true. Yeah, exactly. So I'm happy for him because, man, I was nervous to hear he's coming back. It's like, what do you have left to prove? You obviously don't need to make any money, but I guess that competitive spirit was still burning pretty hot in him, and he made sure he had to, at least get out there and leave on his own terms. So shout out to him for that.
Yeah, the other, when I think of Alex Smith, I don't even think about those things. There's a tunnel there's a tunnel at the U that goes under. There's a road that goes right through campus, just like a main road, and to go from the stadium parking and that section of the campus to like the science and political science and just a different section of the campus. There's a stadium. There's a tunnel that goes underneath the road, and there's a huge. It's got to be 200, 300 feet by probably 10 feet tall, and it's just Alex Smith on the whole side of the tunnel. So they love Alex, of course.
I got one of those in my house, and it's me. And I'm eating a bowl of spaghetti, like just doing what I do best,
shirtless,
man.
Just shirtless.
Yeah, eating, and I got like a glob on my chest because that's how I roll.
One noodle just hanging out, right?
Yeah, exactly. And Ashley Fowler points out you got the John Harbaugh cut. Is that the John Harbaugh cut? I think it looks fresh though.
Thanks, man. I try.
And the question is, are you going to be running your fingers through your hair like you normally do now?
No, not as much. Look at this. Look at that. Look how resilient it is, Glenn. Look at
look at that, man. All right. Oh, there it is. There it is. There's the finger comb.
That's right. But no, I think Alex Smith, like you said, glad he retired. It was time. More than enough time. I'm trying to think if there's any other general news that is worth getting into before we talk this. Oh, you know what? One thing I do want to talk about. What did you think about the difference in the reporting? And shout out to Tanja Bowman, who sent us this in Twitter, is that the difference in reporting between the ranking of the Ravens' ability to draft in comparison, or so like what I'm getting at here is that the New York Post ranked us as the best drafting team in the NFL in the past 5 years. And then there was another article that came out that didn't even have Eric DeCosta in the top 10 GMs in the NFL. I think they ranked him at 16th.
Yes. Yep. I saw that.
What was your take on because to me, being a good drafter and being a good GM generally are synonymous, right? Like they go
No, I just think that the reason is because they're accrediting Ozzie Newsome for a lot of that success and not giving Eric DeCosta the same level of respect that they gave to Ozzie. And that's fine because technically he's pretty new to the job, even though he's been here and been the right hand of Ozzie for quite some time. I guess they're still giving Ozzie most of that credit, which that's fine. But I think if you just looked at what he's done over the past few years since taking over, it's hard. You're hard pressed to find, a better, 3-year stretch than what he's been able to accomplish. And I just want to, reference that New York Post article and kind of let you know exactly why they were rated number one. So this is over the last 5 years. They're the number one rated drafting team in the league, with their best pick being recorded as, of course, Lamar Jackson. And their worst pick, I found this a little interesting. Worst pick, according to New York Post, is Hayden Hurst in the first round, which I guess, because they ended up trading him away. But the fact that they got a second-round pick right back for him and he had success while he was here in Baltimore, I found that a little bit interesting. But they were
struggling to find a bad pick. That was the problem.
I guess so. Because it's hard to knock a 6th-round pick if it doesn't turn out. But
right,
so I guess you got to go kind of high. But they've also drafted 6 Pro Bowlers in the last 5 years, including
that's the most, right? That's the highest amount.
Yeah, including the unanimous MVP, which of course works in your favor too in the ranking system. So I thought that's a pretty good honor. It seems to be that they're putting a lot of weight on this. So I'm excited to see. Now, when asked about it in the presser, they didn't really seem too, concerned by it. They said that, we've had a lot of picks in the last 5 years, and that's probably why, because this is a crapshoot, and we've had more opportunities for success because we've had probably the most picks in the last 5 years. So they kind of downplayed the honor, but I think it's cool nonetheless.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it speaks to not just so you stick to your strategy. Mm-hmm. But part of that strategy is volume, but you still have to hit, right? Like you still have to. It's not just about look. I could take 50 half-court shots.
Yeah.
Just because I took 50, instead of 25, doesn't mean taking a half-court shot's a good idea,
right?
Right? Like you still have to hit.
Unless you're Steph Curry.
Yeah, Yeah, and unfortunately I'm not. So you still have to hit and credit them for that. So that was really cool. But the other thing I want to talk about, Glenn, and kind of transition here into actually before we do that, I guess we'll get into Phil's comments before we do our transition. Phil, he's getting in here. It's not that we are trying to insult Harbaugh, EDC, and the wide receivers of the past years, especially this past season. We're just good. We're just good at developing. I think you meant to say we're just not good at developing.
I think so.
Wide receivers. What are your thoughts on what EDC said? So we are definitely going to get into that.
Yeah.
Phil, so I don't want to disregard your question. However, I'm going to go back to it just because I want to kind of talk really quickly about the percolation of rumors behind OBJ as in Orlando Brown Jr. So Phil, we did not disregard your question, but I do want to get to that because that's how we're going to kind of transition into the presser, and then we'll go in order that. So I'll make sure to put your comment back up, and we definitely appreciate it.
And he did clarify he meant not good.
That's what we figured you meant. So we'll get to it here in a second. But Glenn, the reason I want to bring this up is because Mark Andrews tweeted, on Instagram, he posted a picture of Zeus in college, and the caption says, "The realist, easy money, living legend, 78." And then at the bottom, it says, crap, because I'm editing, crap cuts deep, fam.
Interesting.
So that is really interesting to me because
it's almost like he might know something.
Right.
In the works.
And fingers crossed emojis.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, I guess you could read into it a couple different ways, but the first way I think about it is that, man, did he hear that there's a trade imminent? Is that, or did, is Orlando talking to a couple of his buddies? Because of course they both went to Oklahoma, so I'm sure they're friendlier, than some other teammates. So maybe he said, hey man, my agent's got a couple, and we're this close. We're this close to making a move here. Just ironing out some of the details. I think he could be on his way out. And also with the reports of Alejandro Villanueva expected to visit Baltimore,
right?
That could lessen the need of having him. Not saying Alejandro's a right tackle replacement, but it certainly lessens the need of having a backup left tackle for Stanley. If you bring Alejandro in, at least you know that if Stanley's not ready to go or if he gets nicked up, at least you know that guy can slide in. And I don't think he's near the player of those other two guys, but he's still been a guy that's been a former Pro Bowler, has been in the league for a long, long time, and can certainly play. He has his limitations, but he also has some strengths to him too. So I think if they, bringing him in is certainly a sign that it could be a little bit closer to seeing Orlando on his way out.
Yeah, that's definitely really interesting to me. Man, I'm really surprised by that tweet, or the Instagram message. I would show you guys because I retweeted it, but apparently I don't think we can do that on YouTube. Last time we got yelled at by the YouTube folks.
We got in trouble
for screen sharing some Twitter.
Yeah, so we can't do that. But
look at our Twitter and you can find it.
Yeah, exactly.
But either way, you're right. So with the Instagram post, the other thing too. So and then with Villanueva coming in, and then on top of that, Glenn, Eric DeCosta. So when I watch these meetings, or these press conferences, I look at nonverbals, and I look at the length of what they say, not really the content of what they say, if that makes sense. Because some people, when they lie, they get way specific,
real chatty too.
Yeah, exactly. And some people, when they lie, they're close to the vest, right? And so Eric, I'm not saying he was lying or anything like that. Obviously, I'm sure in some of it he was. That's why it's called the Liar's Luncheon. But when he was asked about Orlando and about Villanueva, he said the very same thing. I'm not going to comment on that. I'm not going to comment on that.
Now that's not outside the norm. He doesn't talk about visits until he doesn't talk about players until they are Ravens.
So, but the reason I bring that up is because I think if there was nothing, like if there was literally no substance to it at all, I think he would have been, not that he would have been long-winded.
Villanueva visit?
Villanueva or even Orlando. Like if there was nothing in the works, right? If it was really like dead right now, I think he would have at least been a little more open about it to me, like he was in the press conference, like a month ago.
Yeah, he may have been positioned through the media like he kind of seemed to have been doing previously.
Yeah, but now it seems like it's close to the finish line. I've swung that pendulum in my mind has gone back and forth whether or not he's going to be gone. I'm full in and I'm staying there. He's out the door. After that press conference, I said, just seeing how stoic Eric was, he's gone.
Just flat refused to talk about either Orlando or Villanueva. And I think you're right. I think if there was nothing in the works, he might say something similar to what he said before. Like, look, he's a Raven right now, and if we need him, he'll be in there at right tackle.
Because he could have said that.
Yeah, exactly. He could have said that, but I think you're right. I think if you read a little into that, that could mean that something's on the horizon here. But also soon after that said, that their focus is the draft. He said also, I'm not saying we won't sign anyone, but our focus right now is the draft. So that kind of tells me that they're not signing anyone until after that March or May 3rd deadline.
Right.
Which, that's fine. It doesn't look like many other teams are doing much signing at this point either. And that wave is kind of over. But yeah, so it's kind of a wait and see process. But I think that trade has to happen before. I'm not saying any signings are happening before May 3rd, but that trade has to happen draft night or before.
Yeah, no, I agree. So I wanted to go in chronological order of the press conference, but let's jump ahead if it's cool with you to talk about the wide receiver.
You want to jump right up to it?
Yeah,
okay. Because that's the big one. Yeah, that's the big one.
So, and of course, Phil kicked us off here. Phil, so we want to recognize your comment one more time. So yeah, the word insult was thrown around, and we'll kind of set the table on Phil's comment here and provide some color. So essentially, Eric and Glenn, if I'm missing anything here, let me know. But
it's my final bullet. If you go all the way to the bottom, if you want to just browse that. But yeah, go ahead.
So essentially, Eric was asked, does it hurt? Like, do you guys think about the fact that you haven't been able to draft a Pro Bowler at wide receiver? He basically went back and said, Pro Bowlers are cool, this, that, and the other. We're about winning. But one thing I will say, and he decided to take liberty to go on the aggressive a little bit, right?
Oh, yeah.
And say the guys that we have here are insulted when they hear we have no receivers, we have no good receivers, this, that, and the other. And we're insulted, they're insulted. I think that they should be. And so that drew a lot of conversation in the media. The other thing that he said before I let you give your opinion, and then I'll respond with mine. But the other thing that he said was that I can tell you one thing, people outside might not like our receivers, but Lamar Jackson likes our receivers. So I thought that was interesting. And Eric defending his team, like literally the club, and then his team of scouts, like the front office. But what were your thoughts on the comments, not just the comments themselves, Glenn, and the validity of them, whether or not you think they're true or, that there's a point there, but also to the sensitivity of Eric DeCosta?
Yeah, it fired him up. There's no doubt about it that this question got him going. I mean, he said that he knows their record of picking wide receiver, but the record he looks at the most is the win-loss record. And he knows they win a lot of football games here in Baltimore, and can point to, I'm sure can point to a bunch of teams that, drafted Pro Bowl receivers that don't, match their win-loss column. And yeah, he said that pretty much all of them were insulted. The front office, the coaching staff, and the players themselves are insulted and a little bit tired of hearing about how they have no receivers. And I can understand that. I mean, when you're the one responsible for picking these and people are telling you you're doing a horrible job, I mean, nobody wants to hear that.
Right.
That's insulting. And certainly as a player, you imagine being Devin Duvernay and James Prochet and Hollywood, and all you see on SportsCenter is how the Ravens surround Lamar Jackson with no weapons, and their receivers are the worst core in the league. So I fully understand why they're insulted. I get it. But at the same time, I also understand, the point that I think some analysts and some fans were a little bit more eloquent in getting across is that they're not saying that they don't have any receivers. It's that they don't have that one receiver that they're missing. That true number one receiver, I think is the main point that people are trying to make. They're not saying they're all garbage. It's just that when you don't have that true number one, it forces guys to then elevate and go to a role that maybe they're not fit for or not, talented enough to fulfill. And so it makes everyone look a little worse than they are because they're asked to do something maybe they can't quite do. So I think really what they should focus on, I guess, is that we just don't have that true number one. And I think that's a fair statement. I don't think that they'd have much of an argument there that we don't have that true prototypical number one wide receiver. And we were kind of wanting one after this many years of being in Baltimore to still not have that true number one. It can be frustrating. But at the same time, I understand his point when saying, look at the win-loss column. And I just kind of want to go through that win-loss column, and I'm going to do it really quickly. If you look at the last 20 years of the franchise and you look at their win-loss column, let me tell you how many teams have more than – first of all, the Ravens have 200 – go ahead.
I was going to ask, can I guess?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Well, yeah, I kind of spoiled it there, but the Ravens have 201 wins. They're 201 and 135 from 2010 – I'm sorry, from 2000 to 2020. So a 20-year period.
I'm going to try and guess where they're ranked here.
Okay, yeah. Guess how many teams have more than 201 wins over that 20-year stretch from 2000 to 2020?
I'm going to say 2.
Well, it's a little bit more than 2, but it isn't much. The Patriots.
Right.
I'm sure that doesn't shock you. The Packers. Yep, that's another one. I'm sure we don't have to look too far to find a third one.
Oh, the Steelers?
The daggone Steelers. Yep.
Is there another one?
Let's see. There's one more, and this team been pretty good lately, but also had a stretch of bad play. But
the Seahawks?
No, not the Seahawks. The
Rams.
The Colts. Because you got to remember when Peyton Manning was there, they were winning an awful lot, and then Andrew Luck took over, and he had some good years as well. But no. So that's all you got right there. You have 4 teams that are – I don't know why I did it that way. But you have the Patriots, you have the Steelers, the Colts, and the Packers are the only 4 teams to have – and then you can say, well, that's a little bit far back, man. That's – you're going back 20 years. Let's go a little bit, sooner. So let's look at the last decade. The last decade, the Ravens have 98 wins. Okay, I'll go over the teams that have more: the Seahawks, the Saints, the Packers, and the Steelers, and the Patriots. So 5. So they're pretty darn good, right? And then you want to talk about postseason success because people always say, yeah, but where does that get you in the postseason, right? So let's look at postseason success. You know how many teams have had more postseason wins since the year 2000 than the Ravens? It's a real short list, Jimbo.
None.
One,
the Patriots.
The New England Patriots. Yeah. That's it. And they are dogging everyone. It's not even close.
And road wins, of course, John. And the other thing I want to mention here, you kind of talked about this. Do you have those stats from 2018? Because Nana is like, we need 2018 through now stats. Those stats might even be even better, Nana. We have 14-2 and 11-5 last year. So in 2018, what did we end up being when Lamar came in? We ended up going, 7-1?
Yeah, down the stretch. Yeah.
I don't even remember what our record.
I mean, if you did it then, it'd probably be a shorter list of since 2018 because there's a handful of teams,
right.
maybe.
You see J-Dub 45 with the hand. That's one flexible pinky, bro.
We can take the Steelers off that list if we're just talking since 18 because they had that one real stinker of a year. So we can take probably the Patriots off that list. I mean,
because of last year.
Exactly. So I don't know how many teams would be above them, but it isn't many. So I think that we have to remember that while the wide receiver position is a bit of a stain on their resume, they got a pretty daggone good resume, and there's a lot of fan bases out there that are quite jealous of what we have as fans of the Ravens. And feel like we're pretty darn lucky to have that. So, and as Click, I don't know exactly if this is true, but Click One points out that only the Chiefs and Saints have more wins than us since 2018. So that's 30 teams, or I'm sorry, 29 teams are worse than the Ravens. So, let's not pretend like this is an organization that is just void of talent and struggle to win games in both regular season and the postseason because they win in both areas.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many layers to that. I think that it's fine if players get insulted, and I think it's a good thing to serve as like temporary motivation. I think your lasting motivation comes through discipline and enjoying the process. But some temporary motivation, I think it'll get you up a little earlier in the morning for a couple mornings, and get you doing one more rep and things like that. But one of the things I think is also important to recognize is that the passing game is just so much more than just receivers. Receivers are an important part of the game, but formulating wins is the most important, right? So, you still have our tight ends to lean on, which you'd be hard pressed to find a better lineage of tight ends. There's probably some out there, but as far as the lineage of tight ends, man, we got names.
Oh yeah.
And we got names for days. So, anyway, I'm not defending those that, or I'm not disagreeing with those that say we need a number one. But this is the thing, Glenn. I'm telling you, man. Who's the guy on NFL on ESPN in the morning? He's the former quarterback. I always get his name wrong. Orlovsky.
Yeah,
Orlovsky.
Yeah.
He look. I'm telling you, man. He's watching the show, Glenn. He must have been watching you preach because he was talking about how the Ravens, rightfully so, don't have a number one, and he did kind of say they don't really have a number two. But he said at the same time, it's a very favorable offense for a receiver because the coverage that you get is the best in the league to your advantage because of the bodies in the box. Right? Yep. And you've been talking about that to where, receivers might be like, well, they were 31st in the league or whatever the case may be. But dude, if you are a true alpha, you want the ball thrown up to you in this offense because if you're a true alpha and you know you can beat the guy in front of you, what else is there? Yeah,
while you may not get the 150 targets, you're getting almost guaranteed single coverage, and you could still get the yardage and the touchdowns that you're looking for as far as, your stats. I mean, so, you might not get the targets, but you could get everything else, including almost guaranteed single coverage on the outside because the run game is just so damn dominant. Yep. And you also have to remember that Lamar Jackson could take off at any moment. So you have to account for that with a spy or something. You can't just, and usually what that ends up is the outside receivers are by themselves one-on-one, and it's up to them to go beat them. And it's also up to Lamar to throw it up to him and show that trust. But you have to earn that trust from Lamar by making plays for your receivers. And I think Mina Kimes put out, I watched a segment she put out, and I'm not exactly sure. She used some analytics that I'm not exactly sure of what exactly they mean. I know it's a way of grading receivers. But basically what it pointed to is that the receivers that we have aren't making Lamar better. They're not going up and getting that ball. Yeah. And that's what we've been saying. We need a guy who can go win a 50-50 battle, can go take a corner and say, you can't guard me. So, we agree in the fact that we don't have a number one, and it would be awesome to finally have that number one receiver that offense or defensive coordinators have to change their game plan to account for. We want to see that. So, yeah. But I'll at the same time, I still want to see what we have in some of these young guys. I still want to see, the progress. And I did see Hollywood, I think, put out a Instagram, I think it was, that he was working with his guys, and he kind of quickly panned over with the camera. And I think I saw Lamar. I think I saw Devin. I did not see Miles Boykin, but I could have just missed him. Yeah, and he was recently with JK. Yeah, so it looks like they're working. And like you said, this could be motivation. I mean, man, if you're, we were much lower level athletes. But if somebody was telling you couldn't do something, or you're not, man, that team is this, that team is that, it motivates you, it gets you going, man. So my gosh. I can imagine that they're out there training extra hard right now in this offseason. Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to go into any story time, but if you guys are ever interested, I got plenty of those. But one of the things I wanted to say about that, think about this, Glenn. This is the first year that Marquise is not having off-season surgery. Yeah. This is the first year. I understand he's going to his third year, and people think that, well, there's a lot of tape on him now. This is the first year he has a healthy offseason, no offseason surgery on that foot, and he's just building on it, right? So I think his growth is going to be exponential, certainly. The other thing too, I want to get into, Glenn, and I don't know if you saw this or not. I thought it was pretty comical, but I was watching a podcast produced by, just a clip of it, produced by Bleacher Report, and they had Daniel Jeremiah on there. And they asked, do you guys, when you're grading players as a scout, do you ever talk about how good looking a person is? Like, hey, you know what? I don't want to take him because he's kind of ugly. Like, and the guy was goofing off, right? Like, he was kind of goofy, but he was like, honestly, when I worked for the Ravens, we had a face grade on every player. They had a 3. Wow. A 3 was below average, a 5 was average, a 6 was above average, and then a 7 was... Who was in charge of the face grading? Right, so that was part of their scouting report. And he said, he was like, no lie, I sat in a meeting, and the front office put a whole presentation together about the best athletes of all time, like Michael Jordan, Muhammad Ali, and all these other people. And they were like, look at his face, like geometrically, like beautiful, this person beautiful, like all these people. Wow. Right? Like, and maybe that was my problem, Jimbo. Maybe it wasn't my slow foot speed. It was this mug holding me back the whole time. Dang it. I was shocked. I was like, literally, I couldn't believe it. I've heard the girlfriend. Have you heard the girlfriend thing? So he also asked that, and he disregarded that question. He wasn't going to go there. Yeah, I heard if they see you have an unattractive girlfriend, they think you lack confidence, is what I heard. And this is an old that's maybe the old scouting. Maybe that's not the new, like, and improved. Super old scouting, right? Yeah, I think that's old school way of looking at things, because man, that's But could you imagine he was like going, he went through a sample like scouting report, and he'd be like, great explosion, great feet, great face. I'm like, what on earth is happening right now? How is this real? Hey, I would have loved to see, we love Sizzle, but I want to see that man's face grade. I want to see Terrell Suggs' face grade, because holy smokes, that guy is not the best looking Raven that I've seen. I mean, no offense. And I wonder if they rank like potential for improvement, like Joe Flacco as a rookie, and Joe Flacco like post contract, like was swagged up. Yeah, right, yeah. With the beard and the hair and the unibrow. Look, once Dennis Pitta started hanging out with him, his whole life changed. Well, I know he cleaned up that unibrow. He's kind of got a haircut, kind of like you got all of a sudden. And then he had that one tooth that was yellow. Yep. He got that yellow cleaned up quickly. The neck beard was gone. Like, and Dennis takes credit for all of it. If you ever listen to it, Dennis Pitta takes credit for all of it. He's like, dude,
Joe, you got to get rid of this, man. Like,
Yeah,
it's
well,
got to go,
someone
bro.
needs to tell AD, but I guess he's making money off that unibrow. So I guess we'll let Anthony Davis keep the uni.
Anyway, I wanted to get your thoughts on that. I couldn't believe it, though.
Yeah, that's it's surprising that he admitted that. That kind of surprised me, but yeah, I mean, I guess when you're trying to get an edge, Jimbo, right? When you're trying to find an edge as a scout, you'll look anywhere to find that edge, and I guess that's where they went. But yeah, so I want to move.
Yeah, we'll move off that.
Yeah, I want to change pace, and we can come back to the wide receiver talk because I know that's a big ticket. But I did want to quickly go over some of the other points because I pretty much took a note on every single question. So I don't want to waste all these notes. But he did admit that a lot of the pre-draft visits, they want to keep those close to the vest. They don't want it getting out there on who they're having visit their program. And it also said that sometimes they'll have pre-draft visits and allow them to be leaked as smoke screens.
Yeah.
Players that they're not really interested in drafting, they'll bring in strictly for the smoke screen, which I was surprised to hear that. And Jimmy, you mentioned the story about Lamar. If you could quickly tell.
Yeah. So one of the things that Eric talked about is he mentioned that, it's always hard to keep visits under wrap with agents. But he said because Lamar, when they were scouting Lamar, when he was coming out when he's coming out of college in the draft process, said it was easy because Lamar didn't have an agent. And so it was easy to keep that visit under wraps. They were obviously super interested in Lamar Jackson, but that wasn't out in the news because it was a small circle of people that knew it. And I don't want to change topics here, but I think it's worth mentioning that I think the same thing is happening now with the contract. I think that they're deeper along in the process than we know, but because the circle of people is so small that actually know what's going on, that we won't hear as much. So remember, guys, anything you hear about Lamar Jackson's contract is total BS. Nobody knows except the Ravens and Lamar.
Yeah, because as he said, it's the agent that always leaks it. It's always the agent who leaks it because it's not Eric. And it's not Lamar. So who would it be? And I can't remember the name of that guy from was the Boston Globe that put out that story like a month ago. That's complete garbage. I don't buy it for a split second because if there's anyone, as it's proven, anyone that can keep that stuff close to the vest, it's Lamar and the Ravens. So yeah, I thought that was interesting that they even use some pre-draft visits as smoke screens. I thought that was kind of
that was funny. Interesting that he was that open about it because some guys are gonna I'm sure some guys think, dang, that's kind of dirty business. But, that also means that everyone does it. Like, it's unavoidable. Oh, yeah. Everyone just does it, right?
Absolutely. And who knows who's the smoke screen? We would have no way of knowing. But he also went on to stress the importance of the practice squad. And if correct me if I'm wrong, Jimmy, they extended the practice squad.
Yeah.
And he talked about how that was a big bonus for them to utilize that. And I think that could be another way that the Ravens find that edge, kind of like how comp picks is, the way that they found the edge to get more picks and take more shots at the crapshoot that is the draft. Well, I think they could use the practice squad probably better than most teams. And I think the Ravens are going to be kind of the front runners and how to use your practice squad to the fullest and the max.
Yeah, agree with you 100%. The only thing I want to mention about that is if I'm a guy like Tyler Huntley or another guy out there that went through some injury issues and knows, normally I would have I would have been drafted, but I have injuries or whatever the case may be. I'm looking at the Ravens practice squad as a place to go because of what Eric talked about, the development machine that they have in place in the coaching staff.
Mm-hmm.
Other teams, I don't believe, put as much emphasis on developing their play. Like, I don't see the Rams being big on their practice squad and developing their guys. They don't even have a first round pick until
they go 8 straight years with no first round pick.
Right. Think about it, Glenn. Literally, we'll be pushing.
The Seahawks have 3 picks this year, Jimbo. They have 3.
3 in total?
3.
So if I'm a guy so if I'm a guy that's knows I'm probably going to go undrafted, I don't want to go to a team like that, in my opinion, because I don't think they put a lot of stock or care into that. They don't see it as an option. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that because I immediately thought that our guy Evan, the agent, I'm sure he works with the Ravens. He mentioned that before, but yeah, mm-hmm. I think that's another recruiting tool for us.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it. If you want to, if you want to go to a team where the practice squad means you'll likely get some playing time throughout the season, then you come to the Ravens. But Jimbo, I can't wait for this next one.
Yes.
Because John Harbaugh admitted and said that Bradley Bozeman is in conversation at both left guard and at center, and said he's proven himself as not a guy who's starting, but as a starter. What do you think about hearing that, Jimbo?
This one was interesting to me because John was super vague in pretty much every other answer that he gave yesterday, and except this one. Yeah. This is about as specific as he got. So this one is interesting to me. It could heavily affect the draft and the accuracy of my draft, but you know what I mean? But yeah, so look, Glenn, we've been calling for it for how long?
Years, Jimbo.
Right. Like we've been on.
And let me just say this. Eric DeCosta was later asked, and he said that they drafted Bradley Bozeman as a center out of Alabama.
Right.
And he only transitioned to left guard so he could play.
Right, and he credited his adaptability to be able to get on the field and do that. But you're absolutely right. I mean, this is a good sign because I think it's a good sign. And some people aren't very high on Bradley at center. I am. I think that he can step in there. He's reliable. He's tough. He knows the offense. He was an All-American center, guys.
At the biggest college in college football.
Right. And he's playing against in practice and the other teams, the most pro talent that you can in college in the SEC and obviously playing at Bama. Yep. Right. So, absolutely. I mean, I like it. I got pumped when I heard it, but also I had like a guarded optimism. I was being cautious about it because we've gotten excited about it before.
We have, but I think what that does is it gives you more flexibility in the draft because now they don't have to necessarily focus on getting that center.
Right.
And maybe if a better guard falls in their lap, they can go ahead and take a guard.
Or really, you could go even deeper and think about it like this. If they feel good about Bozeman at center, it could open them up to feel, to double up on an edge rusher, maybe to double up on a wide receiver, maybe to get a tight, do some other things to where, so if the line is as follows: Stanley question mark at left guard, a Bozeman at center, Zeitler at right guard, and then for now, Orlando Brown at right tackle, right?
Yeah.
If your question is left guard, you got Powers who could potentially switch over, right? Who we saw had a high win percentage in the run game last year. But also, let's not forget about Bredesen, the certified genius that the Baltimore Ravens drafted last year, who started as a freshman at Michigan on the best offensive line in the country last year. So maybe they feel good about a guy like Bredesen enough to where they could say, all right, well, we like him there and we know Bozeman can play center. It's a way to get them both on the field and use the guys we have in-house, use our pick somewhere else, right? So it opens up the world as far as draft picks go, in my opinion.
And if they take a tackle, who knows? Tyree Phillips' best snaps last year came at guard. So Tyree Phillips could slide in at guard. And that might be the position for him to make the most money in the NFL. So
my computer's about to die. Hold on.
Okay, take care of business. But also, I wanted to talk about Eric DeCosta. It was asked about the balance of picking for need as well as picking for best player available, and he said he could go on and talk for hours about that question because I think that is it's a tough, and when you're in the heat of the moment, it's got to be a tough thing to look at. It's a tough nut
to crack.
Exactly, and he said that needs can change daily and are constantly being reevaluated, and I think. We can just look a couple years ago when we thought, man, we have so many corners, man. We're going to have to cut some good corners. I think we ended up releasing Maurice Kennedy a couple years ago after, he had a really good preseason in camp. And then quickly, I think Tavon Young went down, Jimmy Smith went down, and then all of a sudden we were down to like Marlon. This was before Marcus Peters was here. We were down to like Marlon being our only stud corner out there. And then all of a sudden we're looking for cornerbacks from other people's practice squads. So, he knows that a strength can turn into a need like that. I mean, just training, guys could pull a hamstring or blow out an Achilles. Boom. Now it's a need. And when it was a strength. And he also, referenced the tight end group from last year after Nick Boyle went down. So it's got to be a tough thing to balance the two areas. But there's no doubt you have to look at team need. If you just look at their first round picks the past couple years, you can kind of make the link there between team need and where they decided to go. But I think later in the rounds, they certainly stick to that picking the best player available.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I think that the balance of those two things changes as the draft goes further along, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I do think there's obviously a calculation in there's a weight when it comes to best player available, but need weighs more early in the draft is exactly what you're saying, right?
Yep. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
One of the things this was interesting to me because, and I'm glad that it's funny that I'm reading your note here because it's exactly what I thought when you said Harbaugh seemed to be reading from notes when asked about his feelings on players not participating in OTAs. And then of course he said coaches want to coach and he didn't seem happy. He is not happy about it.
No,
he is not. He's not happy. And to me, it's funny because the more vague that John is in his answer, the more upset he is about it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like he's not happy about the situation. And I don't think it's specifically about the team. I think it might have more to do with the NFLPA, the veterans, like not specifically the Ravens, right? Because the majority of teams are doing it. But I think John wants different things in place he just wants to win, wants to get his guys in, wants to get his hands on as much as possible, get as many reps as possible, and be given every opportunity to win. Because at the end of the day, John's job relies on winning. Right?
Yeah, and also he wants these guys to turn into the best players that they can. That's what he said. I want to see these guys live out their dreams. We talk dreams all the time around the castle, and he wants these guys to live out their dreams. But I think also what bugs him is the fact that they're all moving in unison. So if a handful of it could be a small handful of loud veterans on the roster kind of speak for the team, and then maybe those younger guys, a rookie or a second or third year guy that wants to show up, feels like he can't because he's kind of crossing that picket line and he's betraying his teammates. So then his growth is stunted because he wants to follow in line with what the older veterans who've already established themselves, made enough money for generations, and have already, crafted or, worked their craft to the point where they don't need the extra coaching time and extra work. That's not the same for all the players. And I think what bugs them is that they have to now move in solidarity. And now they can't pick and, well, I want to go show up. If J.K. Dobbins wants to come show up and play, if James Prochet wants to come and work with one of these new wide receiver coaches, he can't do it because then he may be looked at from his veteran teammates as crossing the picket line. I think that's what really bugs me is that they're all, and I get that they want to do it in solidarity. They want to do it together in unison and all that stuff, but you're stunting the growth, and sometimes you're maybe even preventing one of those long shot guys to make the roster. And then boom, he's back out of the league and he has to go get a normal job like the rest of us. That's no fun.
Schmucks out here.
Exactly. So I feel his frustration. I get some of the, the reasons why the players have decided to do it, but I also understand Harb's frustration, no doubt.
Yeah, usually 9 times out of 10, I think me by now, and then a lot of you guys out there as well, if you've watched the show, like I would totally be on the player side. I just struggle with this one too because everyone has their own right. I'm not gonna, and Eric said this, I'm gonna stay away from the politics of the vaccination,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think that there are opportunities to stay safe and stay on the field. And things of that nature. And also, I guess what I'm trying to say here is that if they wanted to figure it out, the Ravens, maybe not every team, but the Ravens would have figured it out. Like, for example, I know for a fact, Eric and Bashadi, they would have had temporary housing for proper quarantining for these guys and their families and all this, everything else that they needed to be taken care of to just focus on football.
Yep.
Right? I know that for a fact because that's what this organization does. So I think that's part of the reason why. Because if it was just about figuring out a solution, I think that it would have been different, but it wasn't even about that, right?
Well, also, is it really – look, I don't know. It's tough for me because the third phase is what they're talking about. They're talking about phase 3 where they can have them 10 voluntary OTAs. Well, also in phase 3, which, mind you, only stretches from – May 24th to June 18th. Also in there is a mandatory minicamp where they will be around each other and will be because it's mandatory. So if you're already going to be there in that 3-week period, you're forced to be there or 4-week period, you're forced to be there for a portion of that. and you're only avoiding the other 3 weeks. I mean, if something were to happen, is it not going to happen in the same? I don't understand what avoiding those 10, but then throwing those other ones in the middle of that. So it's not like they're just not going to be in the they're still going to be in the building. I just don't understand how it's much safer. You know what I mean? Because they're still going to have to do those mandatory practices regardless.
And so you're absolutely right. And in fact, it's funny because those are 10-hour days.
Right.
So the other days are by rule, 2 hours tops.
Right.
The other days they have them in for 10 hours between, film study, on field, workout, all those things. And so, yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
What's the difference?
Right. No, you're right. I mean, that's a good point to bring up. So, and it's tough with a team like us. Obviously, was just named the top drafting team in the league. Usually means that we got young guys that need development. So everyone talks about the second-year leap. Well, it doesn't happen without these things. It doesn't happen without, these reps and time around the team, time around the coaches and things like that. It might, but maybe not to the same extent, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, so let's move on. Eric DeCosta said that they like to pick about 20 players over the next 2 seasons in the draft. So that's about 10 per year, and that's a pretty good number. He said that they want to keep that youth/experience balance that they have going forward. And he said, they could add a couple more picks, but they don't have room on this roster for 12 to 13 picks like they may have in previous seasons because this roster is too good. And 12 to 13 picks, there's no way they could all make the team. So that tells me that they're pretty comfortable with the amount of picks they have. And if they do decide to add 1 or 2, that's probably the limit. And if Orlando Brown is moved, then that's probably the picks right there. And then you're talking about, well, do they have too many? Are they prepared to move up if they see a guy they like?
Yeah, this was an interesting comment to me because I also considered it one of the telling ones where I feel like Eric talked about the sweet spot, and just like you said, he doesn't want to have too many, but wants a couple more to find that sweet spot. And I think the way you do them is with that Orlando Brown deal. So that to me was a little telling. Now he could be thinking in his head that's just, he's going to trade back and maybe pick up one here or there. But I think it's about the Orlando Brown deal. And it's just really cool to see. I don't care what anyone says. It's really cool to see Eric DeCosta's brain work and hear a little bit of it out loud. Because I honestly don't think other GMs are on his level when we're talking about just the draft. I'm not saying everything else, but when you're talking about the draft, I don't want anybody else in my room. Eric DeCosta. Glenn, when was the last time the great Bill Belichick drafted a Pro Bowler? What's it been? Over 10 years?
This guy cannot draft. He does not know how. Just coach the team. Let somebody else buy the groceries. You make the meal because this guy cannot buy even his free agent signings. I mean, outside of Gilmore, who, by the way, didn't really work out in the first year, but he certainly did building off of that. He's had some real stinker free agent signings as well. But don't get me started on Bill Belichick, Jimbo. You know how I feel about that guy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we kind of touched on this next point earlier, but I want to get into this because there were some differing opinions around this. Eric DeCosta said that Lamar and that he feels confident Lamar and the team will continue to talk. The extension, hopefully they'll have some good news for us soon. But I want to hearken you guys back to his earlier comments about the fact that Lamar Jackson didn't have an agent. Don't be confused, guys. Lamar Jackson's mother is his manager, not his agent. At the very beginning, what was this like? Maybe 2 years ago now, Glenn. The first time we had Joshua Harris on, we said something about that and we mixed up the two words, and he corrected us very quickly. He said Lamar Jackson's mother manages, business affairs and helps him with that. She is not his representation. Lamar Jackson represents himself. Right. So I think it's important to remember that because I believe that this deal is going to be dropped on our heads. I don't think there will be much buildup when it comes to it. But there were also some people who felt like when Eric started to expound on the effects of Lamar's deal, there were some differing opinions. So I want you to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I'm surprised by it. It's amazing because, how, I watched the whole press conference. I'm assuming the people commenting at least watched portions of it, if not all of it, and how they could come away with such a different take. Because to me, he admitted that a franchise quarterback contract will change the way they've done business the past few years, but at the same time says that's a great problem to have, says that's a problem they aspire to have. They want that problem because they want a franchise quarterback. They want a quarterback who every time he's on the field gives them a really, really good chance to win the football game. But he does understand that it's going to change how they do business when, 40 million of your cap is now being eaten up by one player. I mean, so he's expressing that, yeah, things are going to change, but we want that change because that means we have a franchise quarterback who we can win, a lot of games with. So I don't know how they took that as an insult to Lamar Jackson or positioning or how. I heard some people say it sounded like he was bullying him, or I don't know how they took that from it, because when I watched it, he said, yeah, it's going to change how we do business. But that's a great, great problem. And he even used the word aspire. We aspire to have that problem, Jimbo.
And this to me is so interesting because, look, folks, when Lamar Jackson's career is over, unless he's the next Tom Brady, most likely Eric DeCosta will still be making picks for the Baltimore Ravens.
Mm-hmm.
So when he look, this is Lamar's one ride to the top, right? And their careers are high, they have highs, but they're short. So the reason that I think that's important, he accredited Lamar Jackson for being cognizant of these things and wanting to win and being dedicated to winning, because he's telling Lamar, look, I understand if you want to be the highest paid quarterback. I'm not blaming you for wanting to be the highest paid quarterback or upset you or anything like that, but you have to know, and we're not the only team, if we pay you this amount of money, these things will proceed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Eric said we might not be able to keep some guys. And of course, he ended his comments like you're saying that's a problem we want to have. But telling Lamar those things so Lamar Jackson can make the best decision for himself is important.
Yeah. You don't think every organization has that conversation with their franchise quarterbacks?
I don't think as
I think the Chiefs definitely did.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I think that this one is different in that Lamar doesn't have an agent.
Yeah.
No
pressure from the
But you think the Houston, look, I know that there's obviously a ton of accusations levied against him right now, but you think the Houston Texans talked about that with Deshaun Watson?
Well, they're kind of unique in the fact that they don't seem to be talking to him about anything, no matter what, no coach hire. They don't care. I mean, yeah. But
so, and I know that that's a different subject in and of itself, but that was just the first one that popped in my head as far as lack of communication with your player. But it's important for a player to recognize that. What do you want out of your career? If it's just about the money, tell me, because then I can pay you the money, but then I can position myself as a GM for success the best way that I know how. Mm-hmm. If it's about money, but also legacy, like we've got to find that balance, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I'm perplexed as to, Nana, we love you, but I don't understand how you're coming to this point that you can't trust Harbaugh or Eric DeCosta. I'm flabbergasted. I don't understand it. He's going to get paid extremely well. If he's not the highest paid quarterback, he'll be certainly in the top 3. And I think at the very lowest, top 2 is what I would expect. But I don't understand why you wouldn't trust him. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, I think that he's done his best of keeping all the drafted Ravens that, we've hoped for. I can only think of a handful, or maybe only 1 or 2 Ravens that got signed elsewhere, and they were signed a monster contract, like the highest, the next amount, the highest at their position ever. I mean, so I'm not really sure, where that went there. And honestly, I think that Lamar's in good hands of not having an agent there, because I don't think that the Ravens would even approach him with a BS offer. I think the only offer he's going to get is a respectable offer, because they like him. I mean, they really like this guy. They respect him. And they know that they need him if they want to, get where they want to go. So I'm not understanding, it's the same thing I've talked about on here before. It's the love for the players, but almost hate for the organization and the coaching staff. It just blows my mind, because we all know that usually the organization, the GM and stuff around here is going to outlast the players. So you have to like the organization, right?
Yeah, I know Ozzie was in charge there, but obviously Eric was the man. So when they gave Joe Flacco that deal, so everyone knows that the Ravens went in and gave Joe Flacco a deal going into his 5th year. He said, no, I'm going to bet on myself. And they paid him, Glenn. They wanted to pay him, and they came out and said they wanted to pay him. But they didn't do it 100% because they wanted to. They did it because they had to, right?
Yeah.
I believe they are more bought into Lamar Jackson today than they were Joe Flacco post-Super Bowl. Joe Flacco got a ton of money.
Yeah.
And I think Lamar Jackson is going to do just
He's going to get
fine.
more.
Yeah.
He's going to get more. I mean, yeah.
I understand, Nana. He needs an agent. It's more about Glenn. He's young and he's very kind. All those things are true. But Lamar Jackson has not been dumb when it comes to business. His clothing brand is insanely expensive. He gets all the profit. There's no middleman, and it's always sold out.
Yeah. He's going to go try and buy a hoodie. You're right. Gonna be waiting.
Right. He's gonna sign a shoe deal when he's ready to sign a shoe deal, and he's gonna make stupid money when he does.
Right. Absolutely. And and why share your money with an agent? How much money do a lot of these players pay off to agents, managers? They pay off when they should be keeping all of it. And really, I get that agents play a role and stuff like that. But in this case, in this unique case, he doesn't need it. He just doesn't need it because the Ravens aren't going to do it. I mean, I can't think of a player that the Ravens did dirty like that. Like they just don't. They're raved about by all the veterans as treating them like men. Being honest with them and giving them the respect that most teams don't give players. They treat them like commodities around the league. And the Ravens, they treat you like a man. They treat you like a person. They invest in your family. They care about your hopes and your dreams. I just don't. I don't understand the hate for our organization. I'm proud. I mean, I'm happy that we have the guys we have at the top of our organization because, I mean, I know what it's like being an Orioles fan. And let's be honest. I mean, lately they've been doing some nice things, but my goodness, they were garbage and had no direction for so many years. And you look around the football world, how many teams out there would die for our front office and our coaching staff? I mean,
yeah. It's anonymous. You got to chill it with the exclams, my man. His mom, you might have jumped in late, is not his agent. Right. She is his manager. She is not his representation at the table for his contract. So, but yeah, I agree with you 100%. I'm interested and excited to see what they can do jointly, what they can come up with,
because it's going to be creative.
Yeah, it's absolutely going to be creative, and it's going to be beneficial to Lamar, and it's going to be beneficial to the Ravens. And I'm really excited about it. So, Nana, get excited.
Yeah,
get excited.
Don't be so hard on our guys, Nana. I know you're passionate, but there's a pretty good bunch we got at the top there. And I went over our record, the last 10 years, and also the playoff record. So they're pretty darn good. Yeah, and I think that a lot of your opinions may change if they draft that number one receiver. Say they get Terrace Marshall in the first round. Is everything okay? Like, then we're like, okay, now they're investing in all. Is it just the fact that, I mean, I don't know. I guess that the fact that the vast majority of the salary cap is to the defense is causing some, but that, like we said, that's going to change so quick. As soon as Lamar is paid, it's going to swing the other way, and it's going to be 60-40 towards the offense. So, but yeah, anyway. All right, so let's move on to the next one. I found this a little bit interesting. He said that the draft is deep and good and the first place he started was quarterback, but then quickly went to O-line, edge, and wide receiver as positions that are strong throughout. And I think, I like that he pointed out quarterback. I think most people were like, wow, that's a little weird because we're clearly not taking quarterback. But I think his point was, I think is the first year we're going to see in quite some time where 5 or even 6 quarterbacks might go in the first round. And as a Ravens fan, we're rooting for as many quarterbacks to be taken ahead of us as possible, forcing other draftable players, of course, down to the Ravens because they're certainly not going to be picking a quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. I did think that was pretty funny too. And maybe he was doing that to help. I mean, he's right, but maybe he's doing that to help the fans out. Hey, we're going to have some picks down there in the lower part of the first round because look, there's a ton of good quarterbacks sitting there. The other thing I thought was interesting is Ortiz talked about this being a deep wide receiver class, and he envisions the next few years being deep wide receiver classes, and because of the evolution of the college game and playing more spread football and 5 receivers and things like that. So what is your take on the idea of being able to get guys deeper in the draft that are going to be able to make impacts earlier, where traditionally we take a 4th, 5th round guy as a wide receiver. We see him as like developmental or, 3 years in, maybe we'll see him on the field. What do you think about that idea to where like there's going to be more depth because there's more good receivers? So maybe we can find a guy lower that's gonna contribute. Any truth to that in your mind? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think every year receivers are going to become more and more polished coming out than they were in years past because of the development of the passing game, the 7-on-7s, the flag football leagues. I mean, people are playing football all year round in one capacity or another. But receiver, if you're playing, don't matter if you're playing flag, touch, no matter anything. There might not be linemen on the field, but there's going to be receivers on the field running routes. And I think that's expanded and just made these receivers so much better coming out than they were in years past. And I think a lot of people are saying it could devalue the wide receiver position, much like we've seen from the running back position, where their teams are going to be hesitant to give big money contracts to their receivers with their expiring rookie deals because they feel like they can probably replace their production with a much cheaper contract in the next year's draft. I mean, so I do think that it could lead to the devaluing of the position, at least, in the short term, because these things all kind of go and come and go.
It's like a pendulum, right? It goes back and forth and back and forth.
Exactly. So I think that, but there's no doubt that the receivers are contributing now faster than they ever have in the past. And I think that's just, it's kind of like the shooters are better in basketball. And I think Steph Curry is a big part of that is just the evolution of shooting in basketball. It seems like everyone is either shooting threes or dunking the basketball. And that's really the only 2 forms of way you score the ball. So I think,
and remember, Glenn, that I coined Lamar Jackson as the Steph Curry of football. Remember that.
Well, that's a good one.
I said that, like 2 years ago?
Yeah, and that's a darn good one because, man, I watched Steph Curry. I might buy League Pass just to watch him. I mean, this guy is so freaking fun, and Lamar gives you a lot of that same stuff. I mean,
and the way they changed the game, right?
And the love in which they play the game with, the humility, the lovable superstar. They're both very similar in the fact that they're, just humble, lovable guys. I mean, it's hard to really find anything to dislike about either one of those guys.
Yeah, I tried for years with Steph Curry. It was...
Yeah, you did. And it's crazy.
I decided that it was more about Kevin Durant than it was.
All right. Fair enough.
Now Kevin's gone. I find myself rooting for Steph again.
I mean, he's just awesome to watch. He's so fun. So yeah, I think you're right about that could cause, but that's good news for the Ravens, right? Because maybe they finally might get that monkey off their back and get that wide receiver to the Pro Bowl or whatever benchmark, that would make appease some certain fans.
But I want to talk about this too, Glenn. I want to talk about the safety position because you and I have done a couple mocks. You guys have seen us do some mocks on Tuesday night, and we've talked about some safeties that we like and things like that. But, and I've even, I've said Chuck Clark is relatively vanilla, which isn't a bad thing. Like he's not bad at anything, but he's not like strikingly good at anything. But Eric DaCosta,
he disagrees with you.
Disagrees with me. Called him what? The heart and soul of our defense.
Yes.
So I mean that's incredible praise for EDC, or from EDC to Chuck, and then talked about Elliott staying healthy and showing out. And I'll tell you what, Glenn, I am actually extremely excited about Deshaun Elliott evolving into more of a ball hawk type guy, only because I don't listen to a lot of guys on the radio, but when it comes to football breakdown, Vinny Serrano knows what he's talking about. In my opinion, I don't listen to him when he talks about the Orioles.
Yeah, I've been listening quite some time, but yeah.
But one of the things he said, he brought up Deshaun Elliott's stats in his senior year in college, his ball activity.
Oh, he's a ball hawk.
It was ridiculous.
He picked off Maryland that year.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. So anyway, he said he's really looking forward. He sold me on the idea of looking forward to Deshaun Elliott's evolution to kind of fill that gap that you and I have identified as like this ball hawking type presence back there.
Yeah.
So what's with what Eric said and your thoughts on Deshaun's evolution as a player? Where do you stand today as far as our need for a safety? Are they the same? Or do you feel a little better? What are your thoughts?
I think that it's tough because I feel like he answered 2 questions the exact same way. He answered the D-line and the safety question pretty much the exact same way. That they love the guys they have. really love their starters, but recognize that they need to add some depth there, and particularly some young depth. And then he said that if he was the best player available on their board, they would take a safety and they would take a D lineman if that was the best player on the board. So, and I understand. I mean, there's no doubt they need depth there, right? I mean, they don't have if Chuck Clark or Deshaun Elliott were to go down,
problems.
It's what Geno Stone's going to be in there, who they just got back.
Mr. I mean, negative length.
Yeah, which I'm not necessarily I think he's got a chance to be a player. But how much can you count on a 6th-round draft pick that hasn't seen the field defensively yet? So I don't know how, or maybe even 7th round.
I was going to say, I think he was a 7th rounder. Yeah.
So I don't know how much you can count on him. And then Anthony Levine is more of that dime linebacker. You don't want to put him back there.
Yeah, he doesn't have the youth anymore to keep up. I feel like to have the range, not like he used to. In a pinch.
Right. I mean, maybe a play or two here and there, but that's about it. You certainly don't want him out there for an entire game. So unless I think that it's a no-brainer. They have to draft somebody there. It's just about when they draft him. If they draft him high, then things could get interesting. But let's remember, nobody would have thought we would have taken Dobbins in the 2nd round last year when you looked at our stable of running backs. It just didn't look – it looked like, what are we doing here? I mean, we already have a great room. And now, a year later – after seeing how Ingram struggled with injuries and really struggled to get his footing, it turned out that was a pretty darn important pick to take him. So who knows if we take a safety, it could prove itself to be a vital pick because something could happen to Chuck Clark or Deshaun Elliott or their play could slide. Who knows? But yeah, I thought it was very interesting that he heaped that kind of praise on Chuck Clark. It told me one thing. Chuck ain't going anywhere. I mean, When you call a guy the heart and soul of your defense,
security.
That guy is staying. So I think if the choice is between the two, despite the fact of what we may think and what we may hope for, I think we like Deshaun. Maybe if you had to give me one, it's going to be Chuck if you're only paying one of them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, Chuck's deal is friendly enough, and they still got, 2 years left on it to where momentarily they could pay both of them. And then one, you know what I mean? Once Chuck re-ups, then you'd have to have a discussion, but yeah, it's certainly going to be interesting. Now, the other thing that was brought up was the D-line and the aging D-line and the need to, and you kind of addressed that, the need to draft there. But he reminded folks, of course, and I haven't heard any updates and they haven't asked about Broderick Washington's legal situation. Obviously, he got, arrested in Texas and had an issue. I don't have all the details on it, but as of right now, we'll assume that he's still a Raven. We haven't heard that he's cut or anything like that. And then obviously we know that you and I are both really high on Metabike coming out and wreaking havoc. But you know what, Glenn, I tell you what, my dark horse 1st round pick is going to be a D lineman because it's such you just talked about people being perplexed by the J.K. Dobbins pick.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden it made total sense. And I would, I could see the same thing happening at D-line with people being like, well, we got all these guys. And then boom, one of them going down and this rookie just coming in and balling out. Right.
Yeah.
So what do you think about the potential of taking a guy early based on those comments? What like the likelihood of that?
Well, I think that it just depends on how the draft shakes out, but I think it's entirely possible that they could look at the guy who's on the board in front of them at 27 as the best D lineman in the draft that could fall to him. I mean, certainly to fit their scheme, there might be better. There might be D linemen taken before him, maybe 1 or 2, but it may fit a 4-3 scheme. It may not fit what they want to do here. So they could get the best D lineman for the Ravens fall to him at 27, depending on. We always talk about the run of positions in the draft and how it really shapes the draft. Well, if we see 6 quarterbacks taken before 27 because somebody falls in love with the Stanford kid or something to that nature, if we see a run at corner or we see a run at tackle, I mean, there could be that run that forces the best D lineman for the Baltimore Ravens down to them, and I would not be shocked at all. I mean, yeah, we got some great talent there, but it's aging. And next year, I don't see Brandon Williams here. I don't see Calais Campbell here.
Well, I could see Brandon here. You couldn't?
I don't know because of his cap number. I'm not so sure. I mean, it's possible. It's possible. I guess I should say that.
But definitely not Calais. I mean, I think he's done. Actually,
yeah, not Calais. I mean, we don't know. We just don't know at that position. So I think it's definitely possible. I'd be a little bit surprised by it. I mean, just as surprised as I was about seeing JK come in. But it would tell me if they did draft him that he's by far the best player on their board and that they had to take the guy. Just had to.
Right. Because like we know, I mean, a lot of times the Ravens way best player available so much more than other teams where need counts so much more. So certainly that's going to be interesting to see. And one other thing I want to get your comments on, this isn't about the press conference, but I've been doing some mocks, getting my full 7th round together, which Glenn, we're gonna do on Thursday. We're gonna reveal our full 7-round picks. So Glenn and I each are gonna put our 7-round mocks together, and then we want you guys to grade them, and we're gonna have, based on accuracy, we're gonna see who wins this year. Right now, Glenn holds the title, but we'll have to see.
Let me get my ring on. Hold on, I'm gonna just sit here like this. You know what I'm saying? Because I am the reigning champion in 410 Sports Talk mock drafting. But this year we're going a lot deeper.
Yeah.
So if you win this year, I mean, you'd certainly take over the full bragging rights, and I think even more than I had last year, because we certainly didn't go 7 rounds deep.
Right. And then the other thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna reach out to DraftPlex, and we're gonna have him grade our drafts after we publish our drafts.
I like it.
Based on likelihood, because he's all about the accuracy, not on what he likes as far as his preferences, but likelihood.
Right.
So that'll be a lot of fun as well. The other thing I wanted to, so this is one of the things as I was developing my pool of players, of draftable players, I started thinking about something. I think that we could go early at center with a guy like Landon Dickerson, right? Early 2nd round, something like that. Who knows? Maybe we trade back from the first, take him in the 2nd round, pick up, a pick or two. But the kid out of Stanford, and his name is escaping me right now, but the center out of Stanford, I hold on, I got his name right here. Let me get it for you.
Is he expected to
Drew
be?
Drew Dahlman.
Okay.
I think he's gonna go later. He's projected to go later in the draft. But went to Stanford, based on the reports, he's a smart kid, gritty kid, physical, has a lot of the tools that teams are looking for a day one starter, but certainly an eventual start in the NFL. I could see them doubling up on like if you go with Landon and then this guy's sitting around at 5th round and he's graded so much higher than other people. You want a little bit of an insurance policy. Does that make so? That's one of the other things I'm starting to develop in my mind. Like, is there a possibility? I know it sounds crazy to go 2 centers, but a lot of these guys can bounce out and play guard. If you can play center, you can play guard for the most part, unless you're extremely small. But anyway,
smart guy coming out of Stanford. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. So,
but look, it wouldn't be outside the realm of possibility to see the Ravens double down at a position. I mean, that's something that they do often. I mean, they did it with tight end. They'll do it if they feel like the value is there. So I think you're right. If the value's there and they like them, because how much longer is Macari going to be here if they take, like you mentioned, a center in the 1st round or 2nd round? Then Macari's days are numbered here unless, he stays on at a very reasonable rate to be a backup I like his versatility, but I could see another team maybe paying him a little bit more to come in and compete for a starting job, which if we're taking a 1st or 2nd round center, I think that job is his to lose. So yeah, I wouldn't be shocked to see that. I mean, I just can't wait for this daggone draft, Jimbo. It just seems like, I mean, every morning, as many of the fans know, I start my morning Good Morning Football, and every morning I'm hearing more and more draft talk. So I needed to get here quickly because, man, my goodness.
And we're going to be streaming live the whole 1st round, guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Make sure you tune in and
get your coffee because it might get late. Because let's remember, just because the Ravens say they pick a guy at 27, don't go to sleep just yet because they've done it before. They've traded back to 32 before. So let's not make sure you're with us all night.
Now, let me say one other theory that and this is more from the press conference than my mock drafting, but I'm starting. One of the takeaways from that meeting or from the press conference to me was, we're going edge. You talked about doubling up. I don't think I would be shocked if we go receiver 1st round. The only way I see it is if the edge run is, it's just depleted at that point, and there's so much value for that potential wide receiver that they see at 27. But I think the likelihood of going edge, Ortiz talked about there being a few edge guys in every round. He says it's not like it's top heavy or there's some value guys at the end. Every round they see edge guys. So I can see the Ravens a first and a third on edge guys, a first and a second.
Yeah. There's no doubt about that. Yeah.
So to me, that I honestly, I was kind of, obviously we need an edge, but it just reiterated to me the priority that the team has. And we've talked about this before. When they identify problems, they attack them till they're not problems anymore.
Mm-hmm.
We saw that last year, whether it's through free agency or the draft. We saw that in the run game, the run defense.
Yeah. And how about when they needed a quarterback? I mean, they made it so we should have seen it coming. They signed James Urban well before the draft. James Urban wasn't brought in for Joe Flacco.
Right.
No, that plan was set in place. They knew they were taking a quarterback. I think they already knew they were taking Lamar Jackson because, they're seeing all the prognosticators saying that he's going to go late. So they knew they had a real good shot at getting him. So yeah, I think that, this focus on the wide receiver room, but I must slightly disagree with you a little bit.
Okay.
I didn't mock the Ravens to take a receiver at 27. Matter of fact, I think you did in your last mock.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm starting to think there might be a shot at us taking one at 27. I think there's a shot at it because even if you're a fan of even if you're Eric and you're John and you're a fan of the guys we have on the roster, I don't think even the most optimistic Ravens fan would call any of these guys a guy you can count on as being your number one.
Right.
Like a true number one, right?
Yep.
So unless you see a guy late who has maybe, limited experience, maybe he dealt with some poor quarterback play and you like what you see from a physical standpoint, you like the tape he put out, unless you see a guy like that late, you might feel like that guy is there at 27. I think it's possible. So while I'm not gonna say I'm necessarily gonna mock a receiver at 27, I also wouldn't say I think it's more likely now than I thought like a week ago, because it's clear that they're annoyed by this, and it's clear that they made a focus on fixing that problem. And I think it's more than just bringing in a couple receiver coaches and Sammy Watkins. I still think there's one more receiver that's going to be added to this room, and we'll just have to wait and see if it's early or if it's late.
Man, that's going to be interesting. A lot of fans are going to be really happy if we go early with wide receiver, or a lot are going to be really upset if we don't. There's one other nugget that I want to provide you here when I was doing some research, just to give you guys something to chew on here. If my screen will load properly. I was looking at the tight end position, so I figured I'd share the knowledge. Not that you guys don't have it already. But there's two tight ends I was looking at for late in the draft. One of them at a freaking BYU, Matt Bushman. But the kid I was looking at, I know, seriously, they're about to take my card, man, is Noah Gray out of Duke.
Okay.
So Noah Gray is 6'4", 240. It's interesting. When I read his descriptions, it kind of reminded me of Dennis Pitta a little bit. It says here, Gray is too small to be an inline tight end, yet dynamic enough for the move label. He's a salesman on in and out breakers, runs a mean option route, great feel working the middle of the field and sitting in zones, soft hands, and only 3 drops in 107 career catchable passes.
Wow.
Now he's small. He doesn't have a large wingspan. He's not a great blocker. Sounds a little bit like Dennis Pitta to me. Mm-hmm. But not that 6'4", 240 is small, but in relation to Nick Boyle, who has to stay on a diet to be under 300 pounds. So anyway, I only bring that up to say you talked about in the last one, us wanting to look at a pass catcher at tight end, right? We got, the big bruiser, we got Patrick Ricard, we got Nick Boyle, we got Mark Andrews, but to be able to supplement Mark Andrews in the pass catching game, this could be a way that we do it late in the draft. I like this kid. And then also let me just mention Matt Bushman here from BYU. And one of the notes I think is interesting. It says one of the most productive tight ends in the country, 3 straight 500+ yard seasons, a physical yak ability, 15 broken tackles on 125 career catches, straight line speed, a weapon on overs and crossers. And he's 6'5", 240. It does say he has some unavoidable stiffness in his game. He can get hung up on contact from linebackers early, and he's already 25 years old. So I don't care too much about the age because we've been there with Dennis and a few other guys. But that could be another late round guy. Now, he's a projected 6th, 7th rounder, but production in college usually means production in NFL. Not always. Obviously, Snack Daddy's a bum, but I mean, there's just no way around it, right? But anyway, I just wanted to give you those nuggets there because I might be taking. Now, don't go taking them, Glenn. This might be a smoke screen.
What was that
this
name
might
again?
Not be. This might be a smoke screen.
Yeah, you're smoke screening me. Well, I will say this. I agree in the fact that they love going after guys that are ultra productive in college.
Yeah.
They don't, which is why when I see, I think it was Jeremiah or Bucky Brooks had Jason Oweh
the Ravens, and you're like, yeah,
there's
right.
just no way. You can't tell me they're going to take an edge rusher who had 0 sacks. It makes no sense to me. I don't care what he did in shorts and how high he can jump and all that stuff. It comes down to production when it comes to the Ravens drafting a guy, and you can look at across even Duvernay and Prochet. Look at their production while they were mid to later round picks. Incredible production in college. So yeah, I mean, I'm going to write that BYU tight end down because I liked what you said. 3 straight years of 500 plus yards.
Yeah, when I saw that, my Ravens Spidey sense went off. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm gonna be watching for you because I'm gonna start counting how many BYU guys you're, and
I've now mocked 3 to the Ravens.
Yeah,
and
I don't know what is going on here. No Utes after Tyler Huntley, and you were also jumping on the Moss.
Zach Moss, man. We should have taken him.
You were all over him last year, but now all this BYU talk's got me questioning your loyalty to your squad and your school. And I might have to make a phone call to some other alum and have you booted out of whatever program you have there. But yeah, so no, I mean, I think it's going to be interesting to see, what they do. But yeah, make sure you guys are here with us. I mean, if you're watching the draft at home and you want some company,
tune in.
Tune in because we'll be live the whole time. We'll be talking with the chat. We'll make sure we have our ticker going. And shout out to Billy Seals.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, with the $5 tip for James's barber. I agree. It's looking sharp. I'm done. I'm glad I'm done seeing the floppy hair. And I know when you're going on your runs, you're glad to have it not bounce off your forehead.
Man. Absolutely. And let me tell you guys what, get excited for the draft because if you think that, I mean, obviously Glenn and I have known each other for a long time. I think he's a funny guy, but in these off the cuff events like this, oh my gosh, you guys are going to be falling out of your chair. No pressure, Glenn.
No pressure.
Yeah. But it's just unavoidable. I mean, the guy is just hilarious. So tune in. I mean, it's going to be informative, a great laugh, a great time. Hopefully the Ravens do great in the first round. But the other thing too, we want to let you guys know, we're going to be doing a couple cool things around the draft. So obviously we'll have Draftplex to come in to rate our 7th round, our 7-round mock draft for the Ravens. We're going to be doing our own full first round pick. Last year, I think we got 15 out of the 32 right. And so we want to build on that legacy. We do that one together. So it'll be one full first round. We'll have deliberated and given our full 32. And then on top of that, what we'll be doing post-draft is we're going to be doing our very best to reach out to the media members for the schools that these guys went to have them on for 10, 15 minutes during one of these live sessions or on its own video. So that way we can give you guys as much insight as possible into who these players are. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think you guys are going to enjoy it. So make sure, I'm sure you are already, but if you're not, hit the subscribe button, tune in, turn on those notifications, do all of it. It's going to be an absolute blast. We had fun tonight. We got to give some shout outs, right, Glenn?
Oh yeah, absolutely. King, as always in here. And honestly, I think Troy who was really Troy was arguing with somebody. Who was trolling?
Everybody tonight.
McDiamond, I think, was really trolling a couple times. I saw a bunch of announcements on Odell Beckham coming here, and
McDiamond is our resident spammer.
Yeah, I think he's trolling, and he got a couple people because they bought Tim Ott or Oat. I think it's Ott. Thanks for coming back. We hadn't seen him in a couple times. Billy Seals, he's always in here and
shout out.
Yeah, and commenting.
One of our faithful patrons.
The anonymous YouTuber still cutting up with McDiamond and still might be buying a little bit of what he's selling. J-Dub.
I think he got the funniest comment tonight with the hand emoji.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know what I was doing. But somebody earlier, I forgot to mention it. They tried the McBanger and they suggested put a little honey mustard on there. Okay, so
Look, and that's a great suggestion because when I did the McChickens back in the day, it was more honey mustard than McChicken, ladies and gentlemen.
okay,
So that's a great suggestion. I'll also shout out Gareth, one of our patrons that's in Northern Ireland, said he gave it a try and he was sick the next day.
Yeah, of course he was. It's a horrible sandwich. I mean, you might be talking about what
if I win, you're eating one.
You know how long it's been since I've had McDonald's? Years.
Well, I'll have a Pepto-Bismol next to you and some Tums. You can just.
Now, what happens if you lose? Because
you can't do that to me.
I know. I'm not gonna make you eat meat. I'm not gonna do you dirty like that. But I'll think of something. Maybe I'll get some cauliflower and soak it in some hot sauce again or something for you.
No.
I'll have to think about it. But yeah, J-Dub, we appreciate it, and he gave you a shout out on the haircut. Trend Killer, thanks for showing up again. I don't know if I mentioned Nana, but we appreciate you.
Always,
of course, as always, Donovan Sales, Senior. He's always in here. If I missed you, I apologize. All the people who did not comment and just watch, we appreciate you, and thanks for coming. Yep. And so we'll see you guys soon.
See ya.
See ya.